Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a truly fascinating, deeply dark graphic novel style fable. It's all about the tragic fragility of human pride. And to really do this narrative justice, I'm actually going to step right into the role of its detached narrator. So, speaking to you as the star of Cosmic Mind, I'll be your guide through this chilling story. We're going to explore a realm of decaying architecture, rigid dogmas, and the ultimate, absolutely inescapable collision between our desperate need for control and the chaotic light of the universe. A clinical observer to the messy mischief of humanity. Now, to really understand this world, you have to look at it through my eyes, or rather, through my Jester Motley mask. I'm a clinical observer to a world that is utterly desperate for rigid control. And honestly, it's pretty exhausting to watch. From high above, governed only by the overarching laws of humanity and a sort of cynical yet celestial wisdom, I just watch in silence. The mask I wear reflects the exact messy mischief that the subjects of our story are trying so desperately to suppress.
Act 1. Witness in the Gilded Cage.
So let's step into the brittle stone chambers of our central figure. We'll call him the Pale Inquisitor. Now, as he roamed his chilling, decaying architectural halls, he wasn't driven by a sense of justice, he was driven entirely by fear. He bound his soul to this thing called the spirit of gravity. It's basically a desperate anchor forged to avoid the terrifying, formless void of change. And I mean, think about it. How often do we as humans build our own architectures of pride? You know, those rigid routines and echo chambers we use just to hide from the unpredictable truths we can't control. He was absolutely terrified of anything he couldn't measure, control, or condemn. To shield himself from all that, he wove his ancient, unbending laws into what is essentially a gilded cage of linear logic. He used these mechanical, rigid laws to literally deafen his ears to what I like to call the verdant absurdity of existence. Because the universe is messy, right? It's vibrant, it's absurd. But inside his gilded cage, everything was just straight lines and heavy stones. Yet, while he thought he was all alone in his little fortress of certainty, he wasn't. I was always watching from above. Act 2. Prism of the Broken Bridge. Well, this fragile control completely shatters when an outside force, the pale criminal, is violently dragged into the courtroom. The Inquisitor employed what he termed the anatomy of the ultimate stain. He handed down these mechanical condemnations, presenting himself as completely pure. But in reality, this was all just a projection to mask a massive 95% internal decay. Just think about that ratio for a second. Even for a mortal, that is an impressively terrible amount of hidden rot. He painted the guilty in solid, unyielding blacks, just so his own grain edges might look pure by comparison. It was a desperate shield against the frantic, irregular beating of his own mortal heart. Now, the absolutely crucial thing to grasp here is the sheer visual and philosophical contrast. On one side, you've got the Inquisitor's desperate need to paint the world in solid blacks and rigid laws. It's an act of pure legalistic revenge, which, let's face it, is a trap we all kind of fall into when life gets overwhelming. But on the other side, you have my shimmering, chaotic reality hovering right above, the verdant absurdity. We're talking shifting verdant and red robes, messy mischief, unpredictable whim. I hovered above this courtroom as a chaotic star, shimmering with the tension between order and chaos, recording the actual truth in a ledger way, way older than his dogma. Act 3. The Tribunal of Ash. You see, this kind of unsustainable tension inevitably leads to a complete structural collapse. First, there's the crack. The brittle stone of his unquestioned authority just fails. Next, we witness the melting geometry. That rigid, linear world he built simply cannot withstand the weight of absolute truth, so it collapses. And finally, it all culminates in this blinding, featureless whiteout. The rigid geometry of his world literally melts away into a blinding light. His psychological fortress is completely, utterly destroyed. Stripped of his gilded cage, the Inquisitor has a choice, right? Embrace the change or double down into the darkness. Well, he chooses the darkness. He surrenders to the void. His soul evaporates into this false color of suffocating dark, and right out of the ashes of the Inquisitor, this terrifying entity known as the Red Judge emerges. And it's in this exact moment of total structural and moral collapse that I finally make my move. As the star of Cosmic Mind, I descend. I come down with a celestial intensity, literally glowing with the fire of total honesty. The judge is desperately trying to pull reality into a suffocating stasis, but I stand firm against it. I act as the celestial ego, the bridge standing right in the gap between the judge's decaying stasis and the cosmic jester's unpredictable whim.
Act 4. Spire of Total Chaos.
This confrontation forces the red judge into his final, tragic maneuver. The environment completely shifts into a landscape of haunting, impossible geometry. Surrounded by angles that completely defy logic, the red judge reaches out with a literal hand of bone to wield the key of abandoned prayer. His goal here is absolute isolation. He wants to use this key to lock the doors of the kingdom above, shut out the cosmic light forever, and just retreat permanently into his haunting, chaotic, geometric prison. But right as that key begins to turn in the lock, I step forward. I, the chaotic star. My cynical wisdom flares up like a dying sun in the darkness of his spire, and I whisper this jagged scratch of truth right against the silence of the heavens. You seek to lock a door to a kingdom you claim to serve but never knew. I mean, what a devastating realization. All his laws, the entire architecture of his pride, were built in the name of a higher truth that he was, in the end, completely blind to. Hearing this ultimate truth, the red judge freezes, but his pride just won't let him accept it. He raises his massive red gavel, determined to strike down my celestial intrusion once and for all. But the collision of his absolute denial and my total honesty is just too much for the narrative to hold. As he swings the very borders of this final comic panel, the actual fabric of the reality containing them begins to violently dissolve into blinding light. So the heavy red gavel swings directly toward my glowing heart, and the light of the cosmic mind flares one last, blinding time, and then the story cuts out. The panel dissolves completely. We never even see the impact. And it leaves us sitting here with this profound echoing question. When the rigid structures of human pride finally collide with the chaotic, undeniable truth of the universe, what is actually written in the final ledger of reality? Does the gavel shatter the star, or does the star's fire completely incinerate the gavel? It's a haunting conclusion, and for sure, it forces us to take a good hard look at our own gilded cages. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning the architecture around you.